Welcome to another channel unboxing. Today we'll be taking a look at the new Russian Napoleonic Uhlans released by Perry Miniatures. It's another one of their hard plastic box sets. It was in tooling for a little bit of time, although there were previews on the website, unlike the surprise announcement of the Duchy of Warsaw infantry, which is forthcoming, which was previewed at Salute. And here they are. I received them at the same time as the Franco-Prussian War French infantry, which you can see in my other video. And we're going to be diving in and having a look at the contents of this. Now, first things first, slightly deeper box than some of the others. For comparison's sake, and that'll become relevant why I've got these later, that is the depth of the Allied Cavalry, the Prussian-Russian version of the box. You can see slightly deeper, leaves more room inside the box, hopefully for lots of lovely sprues and contents. I've got these to one side because we're going to talk about them a little bit in conjunction with these. So first things first, we'll skip the sides, go straight to the back of the box. There we are, standard Perry box. A little bit of information on the top left-hand side there, a quick example of how the miniature goes together, and some examples of the uniforms and pennants for the Russian Uhlans. And notwithstanding, of course, the very nice Peter Dennis artwork on the front of the box. So with that, let's dive into the contents. Okay, so as you can see, these are all the lovely sprues I've taken out of the box and everything else that you get inside a single box as it comes. So we'll just separate these out in the first instance into different bits and pieces. Just to get out of the way, as common with all my reviews and contents for Perry plastic miniatures, there's the standard green Renadra bases. Do with them what you may want to. Very quick, easy canter. We'll go straight to the leaflet on this occasion, as it's fairly straightforward. As common, a little bit of information and historical background to the units themselves, a little bit of organisational information on their TOE, and one of the most interesting things about this set, not only do they normally do commonality between sprues for certain types of infantry sets, this one's now got commonality with the aforementioned Allied Cavalry box set, which is very interesting to me because I'm interested in potentially trying to make some other types of troops. But it mentions that, goes through the various different types of regiments and their uniforms and associated pennants, and you can see there's more of that information on the inside. A few additional useful notes and bits and pieces, including to do with the bridle work, depending on the regiment. Some nice handy pennants that you could cut out and use for your miniatures if you wish to do so. Some more of them on the back, and then some lovely painted examples of the different miniatures, some of the different uniform combinations, and giving you a little bit of information and pointer towards why their colours, to do with the different types of overalls and so on. And then most interestingly at the bottom here, as was previewed in one of Perry's posts, what you can do to convert to create regiments other than Russian Uhlans using the contents of this box and the contents of the Allied Cavalry box. The one I'm particularly interested in is creating potentially Russian Landwehr and Uhlans, although as it says there, you will need the French light cavalry horse, which is available as a separate sprue on Perry's website, and which I've got some of, to create the Landwehr, because they have slightly different saddle work and arrangements going on there, as opposed to the Uhlans, for which you only need the body from the other set, for example. And that one's obviously using the Russian Dragoon uniform from the other set. So that's really interesting. I really like the fact that the infantry sets they've been releasing, for example, the Franco-Prussian War ones, you can mix and match the arms between the firing line and the advancing figures to get a nice combination of different poses and different dynamics and have a good experiment and really get a good money's worth out of that set. The fact that you can mix and match this with a totally different set, I really like that, because that's showing that's nice forward-looking design, not just within a certain part of the range or a certain type of box. It's going, okay, how can we progress from the previous one to the next one? So I really think they've thought this through in terms of the arc of design progression and interoperability of different parts, which is really great to see. Now, in terms of what you actually want to hear about, which is not my waffling about design principles, it's the sprues. So here they are. First thing, in fact, what we'll do is there's the single command sprue, which most of you will be familiar with if you've ever had a Perry Miniatures box set, but you tend to get one of these, infantry or cavalry. As you can see, it therefore fits out for usually an officer and a trumpeter, and there are sometimes alternatives for standards or guidons, depending on the type of set. In this case, this is the sprue. I'll move that box so you can see it a bit more clearly from behind. So you've got the two halves of the horses as normal, and you've got different heads for different bridle work. and the appropriate bodies with uniform detailing and epaulettes, etc. For the two different figures in there. The trumpet arms, different swords, etc. I'm sure you can, customize between this and the other sprues as well. And then, and I will have said this definitely in my other review of the Franco-Prussian War Infantry, the most exciting thing, the heads face out of the sprue and not sideways, so you're not going to have to deal with any of those unfortunate mould lines or bits of flash running vertically down the front of the face, which is incredibly hard to clean up, even with a sharp craft knife and a lot of patience, and risks damaging that part. They've clearly had to think about it and decided to rotate those through so they now face out of the sprue. So any mould lines you'll face will run down the sides of each of those pieces, which is great. That's a great change. And hopefully we'll see that on the other sprues in a moment as well. So that's the command sprue, fairly straightforward. Then even more straightforward perhaps are the horse sprues for the line troopers. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4 of these, with 3 horses on each, which is fairly standard. That'll give you 12, plus the 2 command, that's the 14 miniatures within the box. So just a single one of these sprues. This is a fairly familiar Perry setup in terms of the halves. You can almost certainly mix and match those halves. For those that aren't aware, because I sometimes see the question, it's just matching these holes on the other side. And the one thing you do have to do, however, is be careful when you match the sides that you can create some slightly awkward horse poses. Horses run in a certain manner in terms of the way the pairs of legs move and interact. They're not necessarily perfectly matched, but I have in the past tried to match some of these and come up with horses that look like their legs are running off in totally different directions, all 4 of them. So just be aware of that, but there is a scope there to mix and match them. As you can see, they've got some muskets or carbines there you can attach to the saddles, and some canteens as well on the side there. Otherwise, a fairly standard horse sprue, so that's good. And then the actual troopers themselves, as you can imagine, there are 4 each of the relevant sprues for these. So there are 4 sets of bodies and 4 sets of lance sprues. So the bodies and the lances, there's not a huge amount on the sprues, fairly straightforward miniatures to build, the Russian Uhlans. I don't think that's particularly disappointing or anything to be worried about. They're a fairly straightforward uniform and build, I guess, in terms of parts. And the actual value you're going to get out of what else you can do with this kit isn't contained with necessarily just the parts in here, because as I said, mix and match to create other Allied Cavalry units. So saying that, these are the bodies and legs, which you can see there. And then I'll turn it over for the heads, which as you can see, hurrah, are all facing out of the sprue, and thus in minimal danger of suffering any unhappy accidents at the hands of a craft knife. There you go, and there's 5 options on there. There are 3 sets of legs and 3 bodies, but 5 head options, which combined with a couple on the command sprue gives you a little bit of variation as well before converting via paint. And then the bit that really lends itself to converting those is the completely separate lance sprue arms. And as you can see here, you can either have them, you can have this whole regiment, if you were doing only Uhlans or another type of unit, couched or held upright and raised. And you can see those different arms there. And this is what's going to be the particularly useful bit to enable you to convert the other plastic set to create Prussian Light Cavalry, or indeed the Russian Lancers and Dragoon uniforms. And there you go, that's it. Fairly straightforward in one sense, as I say. You've got your horses there, both command and line. You've got your 4 sets of trooper bodies, legs and heads. And then your lance sprues, and apart from the bases and instructions, that's the whole kit. There we go, bases and instructions. Very interested in these, particularly as I say, interested in the options for conversion, because I'm interested in seeing if I can create a few squadrons of Prussian Landwehr cavalry using them, as I say, with the French light cavalry horses that I've got off screen, and then also the potential to create some Prussian line Uhlans as well. Just some small groups for my interest and sort of painting interest, building interest, and potentially adding to my 28mm collection for my 1813 campaign miniatures, although those have been somewhat neglected of recent times because there are so many things demanding time, real life and hobby combined. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this first look at the contents of this box. I'm doing these in 2 parts from now on, just to keep the videos a little bit shorter and to give me a bit more time to put things together and enjoy them myself. So I'll be right back in the next video for these, where we'll have a look at the constructed miniatures. I will make some of the actual box as well, because I know there's no point me doing a review and then not constructing some of the actual Uhlans themselves, because that's what people want to see, because that's what's on the title of the video. But I will also be showing, as I say, the conversions that are possible using the Allied Cavalry set and building some other versions of the models to show the interoperability of the parts. Anyway, I look forward to seeing you in that video, and happy hobbying.